Hello, everybody. My name is Teresa Carpenter, and welcome to the 15th iteration of Stories of Service, Ordinary People Who Do Extraordinary Work. And I'm your host. And today we have, once again, another special guest, because I always say we have like the most amazing guests. And I'm so honored people come on the show and talk and get a chance to, I get a chance to learn about them. You guys get a chance to learn about them. It's good stuff. So today I have Michael Quinn. Give you a little bit of background about Michael Quinn. He is one of the most prominent voices I've seen in the military to civilian transition space. Prior to his retirement, Sergeant Major Michael Quinn led our nation's soldiers for more than 24 years, and he has an incredible passion for giving back to the veterans community. I see it every day in what he's doing online and some of the businesses that he's doing as well. So while he was planning for his retirement, he saw these challenges and he resolved he was going to make a difference. So he interacts with industry leaders. He does educational posts on LinkedIn, teaching workshops on military installations, personal mentoring, and advising the Army on the Transition Assistance Program. And he's positively impacted the lives of over 100,000 veterans. Not only that, he's a 2-time LinkedIn top voice with over 300,000 followers. His LinkedIn posts have garnered more than 1.5 unique views. And then he's also done over 50 in-depth workshops just this past year. He helps the U.S. Army Sergeants Major Academy develop a transition curriculum and instructs Army, Navy, Air Force, Marine Corps, and Coast Guard transitioning general and flag officers on personal branding and LinkedIn as part of their service transition. Welcome, Mike.
Thanks. Hopefully I look suitably awkward when getting my bio read.
Oh, gosh. Well, thank you so much for agreeing to come on the show. And I think the first thing that I'd like to start with is, where were you around the time that you were making that transition towards the end of your military journey? Like what place in life were you at that time?
So I don't think a lot of people understand this. I was planning on doing another 7 or 8 years in the Army. I was a sergeant major. I was the operations sergeant major for a 2-star command. I loved being in the Army. We got the list of assignments. They said, you get choice. You get your first choice. And I brought it excitedly home. And my wife at the time said, yeah, I'm not moving. We'd moved 7 times in 9 years, had 2 very small children. We were 8 minutes from her mother, and she finally had a good job. Mm-hmm. So I went from going till 30, 31, 32 years in the Army. I was going to stay in that long, to getting out at 24. And so instantly when I made that decision, I jumped right into the transition. I didn't want to, I needed to have a job, number one. You can't live in the DC area on sergeant major retirement pay. You really can't live on retirement and disability pay in the DC area for a sergeant major. So I needed a job. But I think most importantly, I didn't just want a job. I wanted a career that I loved, and I wanted to take a step. I wanted a new ladder, basically. Mm-hmm. I think that's the other thing. I climbed to the top of the enlisted ladder, and I wanted something that I could climb and keep going up when I got out. And so that's where the transition all came about.
How did you know to start using digital networking and branding? Did that happen while you were still in the Army?
Yeah. I mean, E9s, we have a lot of confidence. I knew I was getting out, and I dove into research online on how to find a job, on how to transition. And I spent weeks preparing for a job fair, and I was still about almost a year out. So it was pretty quick. I dove right in. I spent weeks on a resume, like perfecting what I thought it should be. I had a cover letter. I had business cards made. I wore my best suit. I was an intel guy, so I wore suits throughout my career. And I practiced my elevator pitch. I had everything lined up. And I went to this job fair that was for degreed veterans that, advertised that interviews were on site. They had these 41 employers there. I put all this work. I went to that job fair, and I walked in like totally confident. And 6 hours and 41 employers later, because I did all my research.
Right.
I was told 41 times to check their careers page and apply online, and it just punched me in the gut. I watched everyone around me getting interviews but me. Most of the time, I handed them the resume and started talking to them, and they were like, "That's a fantastic resume. I don't know what I would do with you." Like it was that bad. And, or they would circle my TS clearance and throw it on the pile and say, hey, great, check our careers page. If you see anything, let us know. So it was a real punch in the gut. It hit me that, wait a minute, I'm not as marketable as I thought I was. Like, I'm not going to walk out and everyone's going to be clamoring to hire me at a 6-figure job. That I had to put a lot of work in, and something wasn't right. Something wasn't meshing between my impression of who I was as a professional and what I could do from an organization and what those organizations were seeing. Now, luckily, I wish I remember who this was. But luckily, one of the recruiters I was pestering, like literally pestering for follow-up information, because I was told you're supposed to do that, said, hey, connect with me on LinkedIn. So I wrote it down. And the next day, when I went through my list of do-outs to follow up and send emails, I joined LinkedIn, created a profile, and connected with them. And then I started scrolling around, and it dawned on me that there's this incredible tool that gave me the ability to find information I needed, that allowed me to expand my network to the private sector, to find mentors that I could engage with, and ultimately to brand myself as something more than a retired sergeant major. And it just took off from there. It was like, I tell people, and I know hopefully you have an older crowd that understands this, but like the Matrix, when you see all the little symbols coming down, and he's like, do you see the woman in the red dress? Like, I saw LinkedIn, and it clicked for me instantly. And it's been ever since.
So how long did you spend on LinkedIn before you got your job? Like, when did you start? Like, how many months before your retirement did you go, okay, I'm gonna really use this platform to meet people and to connect and to learn and to grow? How long did that take for you?
So I think I joined in November of 2016, somewhere right around there, and started like writing articles and connecting. And I started my first job with ProSphere as a director of workforce management in the beginning of October of 2017. So 11 months. But like, people have to understand, it was an obsession for me, right? It wasn't normal because I had a timeline. And that's why I'm telling people to start early. So I condensed years worth of engagement, posts, branding, sucking in knowledge into about a 11-month period. I mean, I probably spent at least 4 to 5 hours a day on LinkedIn every day.
Oh my gosh. And that's posting, responding to comments, writing articles,
Yep.
following up with people with emails. Oh my gosh.
Yeah,
wow.
Every day. And I had a full-time job. So when I hear people say, well, they didn't give me time to get out, I'm like, look, you got to make time on your own. I was late at night. I was on LinkedIn, early morning, lunch, when I wasn't in the facility. I mean, it was an obsession for me, but I saw that it was the key to everything transition related for me, that I had a network within the military. But the only jobs that was getting me was offers to work in units that I used to help run.
Right.
And I didn't want to do that. I wanted something different. And so I saw this incredible capability to, share enough content that people saw that I was more than a retired sergeant major. And like, to have conversations with people. I mean, like, I was like 10 people a day, personal messages, like, can we get on a phone call? And I mean, I must have done easily 200 to 300 informational interviews. Follow up to each one. I started one of them, one of my good friends and mentors, Dan Savage, rather early in the process. I'd say I was within my first 4 or 5 months. Dan was the head of veterans programs for LinkedIn. So he was the guy for us at LinkedIn. And I wrote an article called "What in the World is a Sergeant Major?" Based off my experience interviewing for the White House Fellows program. So I made it the furthest an enlisted service member had ever made in that program. But I went to an interview the on-site interviews, they had 20 of the most prominent people in DC, ask you to describe yourself. And I described myself as a sergeant major, and 19 out of 20 had no idea what that was.
Wow.
They're like no idea what a sergeant major was. So that was a wake up. So I wrote an article about that, and it kind of went viral on LinkedIn for articles, especially. And what I did was I sent it to Dan, who I'd connected with a couple months prior. I said, "Hey, Dan, I wrote this article. I would love your insight." And like 3 days later, I was at a phone call with him, and he became a friend, a mentor to this day, still a friend and mentor. And he helped me navigate the process. And then I actually worked with him and a couple other people at LinkedIn to try to get the Army and the services to understand how important LinkedIn is to a transition, to realize that at that time, TAP was not good enough,
Right.
having lived through it, unfortunately, and that we needed more. And so, so it was, he's a friend, mentor, and there was a little give and take there, because I was like, how can I, I'm still in, how can I help you guys do what is right? So go ahead.
I was just going to say, Mike, did you use some of it? Because Intel officers, I always say that Intel people, or not just officers, enlisted as well, are always good storytellers too, because they have to. There's no way they're going to hold the attention in a briefing, sometimes with all that deep level of Intel slides that we got going on, and not be a good storyteller, or not be able to get out something quickly. Do you think that helped in terms of how you were writing these articles and these postings?
Yes and no. So I'm a storyteller for sure, but I was a human intelligence, counterintelligence professional, and I spent most of my career overseas. And I think what helped the most is that to be able to build relationships with people all over the world, you have to understand their perspective. Like, you can't build a relationship with someone in Iraq the same way that you would build a relationship with someone in Korea or Japan or Germany or all the other countries. So each one of them they have different cultures, different ways of communicating, different perspectives on world events. And so I think the key for me was, one, understanding their perspective, and then two, being able to find something we had in common to kind of build a relationship. And that's really blended into my engagement on LinkedIn and what I teach on LinkedIn. In my transition, learning to understand the other side perspective helped me write resumes more effectively, because I would want to speak to professionals in that field and find out what they're looking for, so I could tailor those resumes to their requirements, maybe solve some of their problems without them having to tell me. It helped me write posts that spoke to recruiters in talking about the things that I was learning. And it helped me speak to executives at companies, because I would focus on finding that common thread before the engagement, and then highlight that either through some shared background, whether they're a veteran, content that they've shared, things that are important to them, past companies where they've worked. I'd find that one thing we had in common, make sure that came up early in the conversation, and then really build on that to help build a relationship. So I think that's what really helped me. And you just took me off sideways, but hopefully that answers what you were asking.
No, it did. It did. And I think that a lot of people don't think about things like that, those intangibles that we learn in the military, just from being so well traveled and going to all these different places and having to, fit in with any kind of person in any kind of place. We just don't think through, like, oh, how is that going to help me later on in life? But you were able to leverage that once you needed to, for an entirely separate purpose. And it's so useful, and I think undervalued by a lot of us who are currently serving. So you're spending all these months and months and months learning LinkedIn, networking, trying to explain to people what a sergeant major, command sergeant major is. And how did your job end up coming about?
So I want to tweak what your question just was.
Okay.
And I think that's an issue many of us have. I wasn't trying to explain what a sergeant major was. I was trying to find out what everybody else does, and then shape my experiences in a way that tells them that I'm one of them.
Oh,
right?
nice.
So
Yeah.
all of these informational interviews were not about me. And I think
Mhm.
that's the part where we get it skewed a little bit. A lot of times we think we get into an informational interview that we have to do most of the talking, when in fact, I wanted them to do the talking, because
Right.
when it's give and take, it feels like there's more of a connection than one side talking. And so I did these informational interviews. I mean, I shared a little bit of myself, but I wasn't looking for a job for the vast majority of the time. It was really focused on learning more from them about what they do, about what their job's like, what they don't like, what the career progression is, how they found their job, what their company's like really having these in-depth conversations. And then what I found was the more conversations I had with people in a specific field, the more I started to sound like them. The
Great
more
point.
I understood the right terminology, the more that I was able to rephrase or rebrand my experience to align with those different fields. Because
Mhm.
as a senior military leader, you could do everything. Like, you have an element of HR, you have an element of operations, project management, security, logistics. I mean, you could name all these jobs that we have an element of,
Right.
but no one's hiring a generalist.
No,
Right? So,
they're definitely not.
right. So I had to figure out what I wanted to do, and then highlight the parts of my career that resonated with that field, and start to explain my experience in a way that would show them that I have what it takes to fill those roles for their company. So I actually, I had two offers that came right around the same time, in, let's say, probably September of 2017. So the first one came from a company, ProSphere, where I ultimately ended up working. Uh, I was talking to one CEO and explaining what I could do for their company. And she's like, well, I'm too small. Like, I can't use someone of your caliber of what you want to do, but let me introduce you to another CEO. And I went in for coffee to talk to that CEO. He had his director of talent acquisition right there. And the CEO said, like 15 minutes, he's like, I'm going to hire you. He's like, you're exactly what I need. He said, I need someone to come in. We've grown so fast, we've lost some of the basics. I need someone to come in and, support the workforce, build a training program that works, plan management, keep accountability, make sure we have a stellar onboarding program. Like, he just listed all these things. I'm like, that sounds exactly like a sergeant major. He's like, yep, but I need it from an HR perspective. And I'm like, okay, great. So he made me an offer, and a few weeks earlier, I went to a Veterans on Wall Street event with Dan up in on Wall Street, obviously New York City, and I met a bunch of recruiters from EY, which I'd never heard of. It's literally one of the most prestigious consulting firms in the world, and they gave me their cards. They were really cool. I didn't understand anything on the website, but I actually saw a talent acquisition role on their website that required a TS clearance. And I'm like, I want to help veterans find jobs. Like, sounds cool. And so I reached out for Dan and said, do you know anyone there? And he did a virtual introduction via email, and with a partner that was one of his mentors. And she brought me in for coffee. I spent 30 minutes with her. She walked me down the hall. I spent 45 minutes with another partner. And 3 days later, I was at a final on-site at EY. So when they were figuring out where they were going to put me, but when I got the job offer from ProSphere, I called EY and let them know. They're like, well, we'll match it to bring me in at a manager level. And I had to really think about it. And this is like fetal position on my sofa in tears, trying to make a decision between like this incredible consulting firm at a manager level or a director of workforce management role in a small business. And luckily, I did what I always do. I called my mentors
Right.
and talked it over with them. And ultimately, I took the small business because I thought it would be better for my growth. In a larger business, you're kind of focused. They'll give you a lot of growth opportunities, but you're focused on a role. Where in ProSphere, I knew I had the opportunity, to touch every aspect of the business and to really go in there and learn. And so I took that job over EY. Now, I sent thank you notes to all the partners I interviewed with, like handwritten. I went to like Hallmark, bought notes, wrote them thank you notes, and mailed them.
Great.
They all responded. Like 2 months later, one of the partners asked me to breakfast to check in on me. And I told him things were going great. 6 months after that, about 8 months in, I outgrew the role at ProSphere, and there was no real room for me to continue growing within a company. So I called that partner up for breakfast. I emailed him. We went to breakfast, and he's like, "So what's up?" I'm like, "Well, I outgrew this role. I'd love to consider EY before I engage my network." And he said, "Well, Mike, I wanted to hire you a year ago, so let's get this going." And I actually joined EY as a senior manager, as an executive, as opposed to the manager I would have joined a year prior. And it typically takes at least 3 years to go from manager to senior manager. So it worked out. And the reason being is the difference is a year. I knew enough about business development, about revenue generation, about government contracting, that when I sat down and interviewed with a whole bunch of partners again, I could speak to what I would bring to the firm as an executive, and as opposed to when I was getting out, when I was looking at a job. And so, ultimately I ended up as a senior manager on the Army account under the government public sector in people advisory services, so HR consulting. So since I left the Army, I've been in the HR arena as a consultant. You know, even in that company as a director of workforce management, I was really an HR consultant running HR projects to help the company run more effectively.
I think the thing that I'm hearing from you and sort of the underlying theme is that you just had an unstoppable work ethic. You were just like, I'm going to do this. I know it's going to take a lot of time. I know it's going to be hard, but you just didn't give up. And you were constantly seeking to know what it was you could learn from these people and what it was, how could you fill a gap for them based on what you know?
Exactly.
And you were listening to them and seeing what their needs were, right? You didn't just go in there and say, hey, these are the things I know, and I'm going to do all these things. You would wait to hear from them, is what I'm hearing, about what it was that their company needed. Is that correct?
Yeah. I mean, well, I would go do the research ahead of time so that I could speak to that. So when I had lunch with some of the most senior partners in the government public sector at EY, people that were ultimately going to make the decision on whether or not to hire me, I couldn't be Sergeant Major Quinn, right? They weren't hiring me because I was a sergeant major. I had to speak to their challenges. I had to show them that I was going to be able to come in, hit the ground running, provide value. No one's hiring an executive to come in and learn. So I really had to, before I went to those chances of a lifetime, I had to prepare.
Right.
And that's where all the work came in. Because while I was at ProSphere, I was still spending a couple hours, 2-3 hours a day on LinkedIn. I was still learning. That was not like most of us, when we're in the military, have a 5-year plan, right? There's a 5-year plan. So let me ask you, how far past your retirement does your 5-year plan extend?
Not very far, to be honest.
Right.
Yeah. No, it's more like, oh, I want to try to get into podcasting or get into teaching webinars or take what I've done and what I'm starting to build. The only difference is I have at least 3 years because I put on commander this month. And so my intention is to do at least my 36 months, if not more, and then maybe go for a captain. I'm not sure at this point, but I do all this stuff, A, because I'm very passionate about it. That's the biggest reason. But B is because I would like to think that I can start to very slowly build a brand and figure out exactly where it is I fit to best give back and be of service. But if you were to ask me where I see myself 5 years post-military, I couldn't tell you. I really couldn't.
Or even 2 years post-military right now, 5-year plan. So what I see from most transitioning service members is they want, like, their transition plan is get out and get a job. Yeah. Like, that's it. It stops. Right. And I wasn't happy with that. So I wanted that ladder to climb. And so I had to figure out where that ladder was going to be and how I was going to continue to climb it. And that took a lot of work. And I realized, again, the more content I shared, the more conversations I had, the better my network became.
Mm-hmm.
And the more people like knew me outside of the military, right? So at EY, when I showed up on the first day of the contract, they put me on part-time to support. The most senior clients for that contract knew me from LinkedIn. I remember sitting, like, our client, they're like, hey, we want to introduce you to Mike. And she goes, you're that guy from LinkedIn. But that's instant credibility. She's like, I follow you on LinkedIn. I love your stuff.
Yeah, it is.
And yeah, so it's about, I wanted to do more, right? And to be able to do more, I needed to continue growing. And you don't really grow when you just do your 9 to 5 or 8 to 6 or whatever. Like, when you do your job and you do your job well, you don't really grow. And so I had to keep engaging. I had to keep learning. I had to keep expanding my network to the point where I was ready to have those conversations. And ultimately, look, I had to negotiate with EY to, instead of being a manager, to be a senior manager. Like, I had to negotiate hard with them. But ultimately, it worked out for both parties. And I can't say enough good about EY as a firm, as the great friends and mentors I met there. Anyone getting out would be, I mean, it's such an incredible opportunity to join that firm. And I would tell anyone, if you get a chance, like, absolutely consider it.
What an amazing story. And I just want to just quick break and say thank you everyone for the comments. I've been trying to show them as we're talking, but there've just been so many. And so just really appreciate it. A shout out to my husband's friend, Brian, who's always been a loyal follower too. And he put 06 for me, but I don't really know yet. We'll see where the future goes. But I think that what you said about the instant credibility is really important, because one of the things that LinkedIn gives us the ability to do, or digital networking in general, whether you use Instagram or Facebook or whatever platform you want to use, is that it allows people to get to know you on a really authentic and deep level. And then, like you said, you go into a company. I've had the same thing happen to me before too at a new command. I'll go in and somebody already recognizes me from LinkedIn. So it's almost like they already know me. They know my personality a little bit. And so they already know sort of how to interact with me, or how we'll communicate together. It's just an amazing resource that I think, sadly, a lot of people who are transitioning or making a career pivot don't always take advantage of. Even people who may not be going from military to civilian sector. I think that LinkedIn is just such a great tool for anybody's career. I mean, you've got people from all walks of life and careers who are using this tool. And I think that LinkedIn is reach. I don't know. I know you've experienced this. You have an amazingly huge network. I feel that the reach on LinkedIn is more powerful than a lot of the other social media platforms. Do you agree as well?
I do, but I think it depends. So you can reach a large audience on the Facebooks and Instagrams, but what makes LinkedIn different is you could be intentional about your audience. You can't really do that on any other platform. So when you think about it, when you post on LinkedIn, the first thing it does, it goes out to your network, the people you're connected with or the people that follow you. And then when they start engaging it creates that ripple, right? Where people are engaging, sending it out to their network. So you can intentionally start to expand your network where you need it to be, whatever fields, what industries, what companies you want to work in, whatever, and then just start sharing content. And what happens is it starts going across their feed. They start seeing your posts, your LinkedIn lives, your videos, your comments, or whatever. And the more someone sees your little your photo, your name, your first part of your headline with a comment, a post, whatever, the more we start feeling like we know you. And that's where we're getting to the point where you show up with your unit, people are like, hey, I know you.
Right.
And so when you think about the intentionality of it, is for any career field, is that, and not just for service members. I mean, we're talking about college graduates, you're talking about people in industry. You know, the idea is that you can be intentional with whom you connect and like intentionally expand your network to where you need it to be, and then share content. And the more content you share that resonates with them, the more people in their network start connecting with you or following you and seeing it. And that's how you create a following and a reputation. People get freaked out about personal brand. It's really just a reputation. It's being known for something. I think the challenge is when we get out of the military, you want to be known outside of the military. And that requires you, if you don't share content, if you don't comment, if you don't engage, you will never be known for something outside of the military. You just have a fancy resume and you're waiting to be found. Because there's no, if you're not starting or joining the conversation, then you're not in the conversation. You're just standing in the back and watching. And so that's why I have to constantly force people, like, just connect with people where you want to be and just start posting.
Right. And Mike, just to transition to what Olivia just wrote, tell us a little bit more about the services that you offer to help people with that. We could start with the networking. You've got 3 businesses under one company, and I don't even know where to start, but I think we could start with digital networking since we've been talking about it, but I also want to get into some of the other businesses as well and sort of how you made that transition. Let's go there first, actually. How did you make, from working for a company to going, okay, I'm going to branch off and make this into something?
So I started beginning January of 2018. I've been out a couple months. It was the DoD Skill Bridge program, right? So it exists. Nobody knew about it. I found out about it too late to use it. And HOH, Hiring Our Heroes, fantastic program, had started a cohort in the DC area, and they had 30 jobs, but they had 90 people approved to participate. And so 60 people didn't get internships. And I don't think they really had the maturity at the time to help those 60 find opportunities. So I had like 5, 6, 7 of them start reaching out to me and say, hey, how do I find an internship? And I'm like, well, just start reaching out to companies and explaining it. And they're like, and then I realized, like, they don't know how to understand. They don't know how to explain the Fair Labor Standards Act. They don't know how to explain how to manage them as an employee or as an outside contractor. They don't know how to explain how the program works. They don't know how to file the individual internship paperwork. Like, they just didn't know. And it's not so easy to go to a large company and say, hey, I want to work for you for free. Like, it doesn't work like that.
No one's going to buy it. They're going to go, why?
Right. Not only that, most of them are going to say it's illegal. Unpaid internships are illegal. And so that's where I said, well, hey, I guess I need to create something. And I took all my savings and I built a platform and I built a website with one of my buddies that was at ProSphere with me, and got a bunch of people to come together, and we just started rolling with it. And I bootstrapped the first 2 years. So I made zero money the first 2 years. Like, I threw all my savings in it, and all the money went back in to like give money to the people that were supporting and to continue to refine the website. And so last year, end of December, EY shifted to a unlimited vacation policy, which is fantastic. But then they said, at the end of the year, you're going to lose all of your banked leave because you don't need it anymore. It's unlimited leave. And I'm like, well, wait, I got 6 weeks. And so I wasn't planning on staying a whole nother year. I was planning on staying another 6 months or so to help this project get off the ground the way I was working it. And so I realized that I would be a better partner to the firm on the outside as a service-disabled veteran-owned small business. And I left EY to focus full-time on HireMilitary. Now, at the time that I left EY, I had enough revenue programmed. We'd already started speeding up to cover my salary for the next year. So for all of this year. And I dove in. So there was January of this year was the first full-time And then I brought on a business partner that is a 35-year-old woman that I saw like having to fight because she was a young female through the business world. That is the most competent, most experienced, badass woman I've ever been around. I don't know if I'll just say that. That's why I paused, but I said it, so it's too late.
It's too late. It's all good.
And I brought her on as a business partner. I said, look, right now we're a bunch of guys figuring it out. We need to turn it into a real business. And like, that was the key. We became a functioning business. We had to like build, people don't think it's like, I want to be an entrepreneur. Like, we had the placements, but we didn't have the biggest business processes. We didn't have computers for all our employees. We weren't running a payroll. We didn't have, everybody was 1099. So we didn't have employees. And so we had to build all that from the ground up. We needed an applicant tracking system. We needed to change our program. So she came in and built all of that. And then becoming a functioning real business gave us the pipeline and everything else to make investments and hire amazing people like Olivia to come be our social media manager. So then we were able to expand into direct placement. So HireMilitary was just DoD Skill Bridge. And then about 4 months ago, maybe right around 4 months ago, time flies, we were able to invest to bring Lucy Robinson on the team. And she helped build out our actual direct placement process. And so that's HireMilitary. And it's really, we had the brand,
right?
But we needed the business processes to be able to really expand, to be able to invest in, to handle all the contracts, like everything involved with that so that we could grow. Because we have so many, go ahead, sorry.
I was just going to say, for anyone who doesn't, because there's some people that will hear this in the audio and everything, can you provide people just a little brief description? What is HireMilitary?
So, I mean, right now, HireMilitary is a staffing company. So I like to say we're the only company that can take everything from DoD Skill Bridge all the way out to service members, veterans, military spouses for direct employment. So we kind of give companies access to a pipeline 4 to 6 months earlier than their competitors. And with the DoD Skill Bridge program, you get the opportunity to bring someone in full-time 3 to 4 months and get a test drive. You don't pay salary, you don't pay benefits, you don't pay insurance because they're fully covered by the services. It's like their commander says, your place of duty is at Sears and Roebuck or whatever.
It's such an amazing program.
But only about 10% of the force will ever be able to use it because of manning requirements. Commanders can't let 50% of their team go 4 months early. And so that's where we really had to expand into direct placement of veterans and service members that couldn't participate. And then you really look at military spouses. 35% unemployment right now.
Wow.
It was 24% before the pandemic, and everything's shifting to remote or hybrid roles. Yep. Why aren't more military spouses getting hired? So now when we talk to companies and we talk to a lot of their diversity leadership, I encourage them to actively include military spouses in their diversity hires.
Mm-hmm.
So they're looking for veterans, like that's part of the diversity program. And I'm like, but military spouses aren't a protected group. So I remind them of these incredible challenges that these spouses that give so much that allow our military to operate, the challenge they face, and that how, honestly, the hardest chargers on my team are military spouses.
Mike, I'm so glad you brought that up. When I was a co-author for Complicated Alliances, that's when it really hit home for me because most of my co-authors were military spouses. And Dr. Karen Hills Pruden, who's our publisher, that was her main intent in writing the book, was to show that military spouses are not a protected class and an employer can terminate them and they don't really have any redress. And so a lot of times that is why military spouses are underemployed. And I really wasn't even aware of that issue. With military spouses and getting employment. And a lot of times hiring managers just won't even give them a chance.
Right.
But you bring up such a great point with everybody who's remote these days. Hopefully, in time, a lot of this will open up a little more.
I mean, if we're going to stay on, let's stay on the military spouse piece for a moment, if you don't mind.
Absolutely.
None of my military spouses have traditional backgrounds. Like none of them, you look at the resume and it jumps off the page that says they're rock stars. Perfect. Olivia, right? I had to I had to physically call Olivia and say, take the job, please. Like, I mean, like literally, Olivia had no resume social media experience. Like we had to pursue Olivia to get her to take the job. But anybody that speaks to Olivia knows she's an absolute rock star. And I'm like, she's like, but I don't have tradition. I'm like, I don't care. Like, I've spoken with you. I've seen you on LinkedIn. I know what you can do. Like, I want you to run social media for all of our brands. And I don't think there's any doubt you could see the change
She's
and the
amazing.
impact she's had on our organization. And, she talks to other influencers. I'm like, I literally tell her, I'm like, if they tell them that if they try to steal you, I will stab them. And you can ask her. I literally tell her that. If I find out she's talking to him, like, I will be very angry at them. Lucy's our recruiting manager that stood up our whole, direct placement practice from the ground up. Lucy, had done some recruiting, a bunch of recruiting in the UK years ago. She's an Air Force military spouse. Had worked for a company that was involved in helping other companies stand up, and had worked at vet jobs. So she had the vet experience, but like, when the moment you talk to her, you're like, oh my God, like, yes, you're exactly what you want. But if you look at it on the resume, for a lot of companies, when they think about traditional resumes, it doesn't think. Kristen Rhinelander, or Kristen Lucato now, she's our business development manager for HireMilitary. She was a USO site manager for Fort Hood. And so how does that lead to your relationship manager, business development manager for, a company that's doing a lot of work? And I'm like, oh my God, they're raising money all the time. Like she's been like amazing. I mean, I'm like Kate Wood, West Point graduate, did a little bit of recruiting when she got out. She had a very interesting get out process that we should discuss sometime, or I'll have Kate on mine. But, she's our recruiter. And, again, another rock star. Like, how often do you get someone of that caliber to come in and be a part of this family? Brandy Walker, she's one of our best account managers for HireMilitary. She was the DoD SkillBridge program manager. Like, she was the contract that ran on DoD SkillBridge at Fort Belvoir. So, like all these military spouses, I hope to God I didn't forget anybody. I don't think, but like we're a small company. So, but I mean, like every one of them has hit the ground running and has like punched so far above their weight class. Like I would put them up against anybody with a traditional resume, and know in my heart, they'll blow them away. And so much of it is we've got to get employers to just talk to military spouses. And now, not all military spouses are going to be a great fit. Not all are ready for full-time jobs. I hate to say this. This is why I always get in trouble with military spouses. But I've done interviews where I've seen where spouses have accepted full-time jobs, remote, and then had 3 kids with no childcare running around in the house, 3 small children. Like you can't do that. Like that's not the right job. And they weren't able to keep that job. I've had some where they just like not every veteran is a right fit. It's just every spouse. But what I do strongly encourage, and every employer I talk to, I'm like, look, we would not be where we are today without our military spouses. And so I encourage you to incorporate military spouses as part of your diversity hiring strategy, and just make sure you talk to some of them, because you'll be blown away if you do. So sorry, I
No,
went off my
don't.
spouse tangent. I think I still got in trouble with somebody. I'm guaranteeing it. But
No, don't apologize. And I think that's, like I said, it's an undertapped resource. It was brought to my attention. All the issues with hiring managers and staffing. The publisher she's a human resources director herself. So I had no idea that issue. So I appreciate you bringing it up and extolling how important the MilSpouse community truly is. So I want to get into your the other
okay.
businesses that you have that you have going, because there's so many resources that people can tap into, and I want to make sure we give them all a little bit of airtime. So tell me a little bit more about the digital professional
Digital
networking
networking
ne-
professional program,
digital
right?
networking. Thank you. Digital networking
So
professional program.
I've been teaching LinkedIn for years now. Hundreds of workshops, thousands and thousands of people how to use LinkedIn, and everything from half day, 4 hour, full day workshops, webinar after webinar after webinar with the USO, leader development programs, everything. And I'll teach everyone everything they need to know to use LinkedIn in a 2 or 3 hour session. And what I'm seeing is they were only retaining maybe 10 to 15%, right? So I'll teach it, and then
Sure.
I go over exactly how to do advanced searches, like 3 or 4 different things. And then a week later, someone's like, "Hey, I was in your webinar. Like, how do you find people?" And I'm like, I literally spent 15 minutes. I actually had people from the audience, or they're not tracking the content piece. Like, they never really get past the first parts of the profile unless they attend more. And then whenever someone talks to me about their transition, and they say what they want to do, the first thing I ask is, well, how many people in that job have you spoken with? And 90% of the time it's well, how do you know you want to do that job? And then they don't know how to reach out. So I wasn't having the impact that I wanted, right? I needed a way to get people to actually do the things that they wanted to do. Now, I tried for 2 years to give this curriculum to the military for free. I actually partnered with LinkedIn to no money. We just want to teach it. And I tried to do it on my own. And because LinkedIn is a private entity, well, public now, but not, a nonprofit.
Non-federal entity
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, it just wasn't connecting. And then there's always well, if we let you do it, we got to let everybody else do it. I mean, it was just, I literally had to ramrod my way onto installations. I was traveling for business near a base. I started calling the base transition center saying, "Hey, I'm coming. I want to teach this free workshop. Just give me an office. I'll come in and teach it for free." And they're like, "Yeah, we're good." And so I had to start calling the division sergeants major, or, and they're like, "Mike, you got it." And they'd call and hammer the transition center. It was hard to get it out. So ultimately what happened is I realized that I needed to turn it into a credential, that I needed to make it available for people using credentialing assistance or cool credentialing opportunities online. And so I had the curriculum. We'd done all the studies. We spent a year and a half in webinars, getting responses, tabulating what was resonating, what wasn't resonating, what worked, what didn't work. And then I hired a couple. Again, there's this investment people don't understand. And I had to spend a lot of money to build this program from the ground up, not knowing I would ever get it back. And that's,
Right.
it's not like I'm going to start a business. So we hired some curriculum developers, some consultants. And, I spent months working on turning everything I've been teaching into an actual curriculum. So the digital networking professional program actually takes people through 4 modules, right? So how to create a profile, how to grow your network intentionally, how to share content, and then how to use all the free tools. And each element of each module has an accompanying workbook and an asynchronous learning platform. And so what we do is we've got affiliated coaches, digital networking coaches that made it through that curriculum that will deliver the curriculum in 4 webinars, or we can do it in person in a different format if we need to. But they'll deliver the curriculum. Typically, it's done in a 1 to 1.5 hour module once every 4 weeks. And then the participants, the people going through the program, have a workbook that takes them through every step of what they need to do for that module. Meaning, it makes you examine your micro motives, what things you want to post and why you're sharing what you want to do. It makes you have, 3 to 5 mentors give you direct feedback on your profile picture or your background or your headline. It makes you add X number of years of experience and then analyze why you want that experience. It makes you expand your network. So you have to add 200, new connections. It makes you share different, like you have to post original content. You've got to share online content off platform. You got to do a picture. Like, it makes you do everything you need to do, including informational interviews. So we've taken, like, literally, if you go through this program and the coach stays with you the whole way. So if you run into an error, you call your coach. You go through this whole program. You have been given the tools to do everything you need to do for your career, like to grow your career, post-military, outside military. Like, this is how you build a reputation, a brand, and a network that supports career growth. And what's amazing about it is we did it so that no service member has to pay, because nothing I do ever involves a service member paying for something. So enlisted service members can register at any time, and up to the day that they leave the service. Army, Navy, Air Force, Marine, Coast Guard, and Space Force. Like, they can take it. Officers have to do it outside of 2 years to not have a service remaining obligation, like tuition assistance, credential assistance.
Okay, so an officer has to have at least 2 years left in order to take it?
That's the way I understand it for the different service guidelines. Now, Eric Dunn, who's an officer, prior service enlisted officer, told me that if we just offer the exam, that officers can just take the exam. And so we would just give them the asynchronous platform and 1 hour of coaching for free. We're working through that because my goal is to make it available to everyone. But it's really like, it takes work. I mean, it's a 40-hour course. If you're active on LinkedIn, it might take you 20 hours, 15, because you gotta, if you're a rock star, you could test out. But the idea is to get people to not just sit in a webinar, but to actually have to break through those barriers, like actually post, actually reach out to strangers and ask for advice, and so that's a digital networking professional. And then the digital networking coach was, let's be honest, 18 months ago, 20 million people were out of work.
Right.
And it felt like 5 million of them suddenly became LinkedIn coaches. And they were raiding and pillaging our veteran population. Like, I saw people suddenly become LinkedIn coaches that didn't even have a complete LinkedIn profile themselves. Like, I'm sorry, garbage. And some of them were like reaching out to me like, hey, let me help you. I'm like, are you kidding me? Did you even look at my profile? And so the coach credential was 2 things. One, it's a way to certify experience on LinkedIn. So when we talk about coaching, the primary foundations of our coaching experience are, you have to have 25 logged and verified coaching hours for people using LinkedIn. So, if you've done 25 hours, at least you've gotten your coaching together, and we can go check their profiles. And then you've got to actually be able to deliver the curriculum. So to pass the coaching exam, you actually have to deliver the curriculum to our proctor, all 4 modules. So we make sure they have the in-depth knowledge to be able to deliver it. And so when someone's a digital networking coach, there's no doubt that they have the knowledge and experience to actually coach this curriculum. So,
wow, Mike, I'm so impressed. You have this down to a science.
Well,
and I really didn't think that this could be. Like, I think a lot of people, when they go into this, they're just like, oh, I'm posting, I'm networking. No, it is intentional, and it is targeted, and there is a way to use this tool in a strategic and scientific way. And the fact that you've done that and given people this roadmap, I think, is so valuable. within these industries and within this service. And
Yeah.
one of the things I saw that you most recently posted on, and and I'll leave it to you to give as much or as little detail about this, but is trying to get this more adopted by the military in their transition programs. Can you
Yeah.
talk to me a little bit about? I know that you've been frustrated in the past about it,
Yeah.
but and like I said, share as much or as little as you're comfortable with. But can you talk to me a little bit more about what you would like to see the
Yeah.
military adopt more when it comes to the transition assistance program?
So are you talking about the transition assistance program, or are you talking about LinkedIn?
I'm talking. I'm talking about using the tools that you've learned, that you've developed, and the things that you've done, and using like LinkedIn, and being able to bring that more robustly into our official transition programs.
So let me start off by saying, because I beat up the transition program on occasion, and so I want to say that there are amazing people in the transition space. Like, there are amazing facilitators teaching the DOL employment workshop. There are amazing people in transition centers. There are amazing people working at the VA, DOL, and in service leadership doing it. The problem is that I have seen is that it's not systemic. The way that they've defined the requirements, the way that they've developed the curriculum, and the way that it's been contracted has led to a lack of qualifications and experience for a large amount of the people responsible for teaching it. And again, like, this is a shoe fits wear it thing. Like, if you get mad because I said that, then it's probably you. I'm sorry. That's me being, that's me, right? I'm going to tell you how I see it. So they say they teach LinkedIn, but the vast majority of the people out there teaching it don't understand LinkedIn. So they're not getting any real training. It's 4 slides. Now, you have amazing facilitators that built their own piece and go above and beyond and teach LinkedIn. And so I do find students that learn how to do advanced searches. I do find students that have put together profiles, because you have these amazing individuals that take less money to follow their passion and give back. But it should be
right.
It should be a defined part of the curriculum, and it's not there. And so I think we need more of a focus. Like, it got to the point where, like, I'm going to do this from the outside. I'm going to stop trying to influence the process. And you see a lot of people that are active in veteran space feel the same way. Now, pie in the sky, like, my fix to the transition process is to get away from the 2000s brick and mortar requirement. If anything taught us during this transition, during this COVID pandemic, collaboration tools, everything else, is that you don't need to have 700 instructors on all the installations around the world full-time teaching classes of 10 to 15 people, 20 people, whatever. Like, you can, and because when you have this requirement to put these people everywhere on site, what happens is you've got to pay them. And so the salary comes in. So my dream would be to leverage technology better, to be able to provide classes that are done virtually, right? To give people, so that you could hire more qualified, you could pay a better salary that'll get more qualified people, or allow you to retain the qualified people that are doing it now and reward them. So I would like to see them done virtually for the classes themselves. I'd like to see a well-staffed call center for individual one-on-one support. And I'd like to see an LMS with curated content specific to the transition that every transitioning service member has to. It's not that hard to do it, right? Yeah. And then the other part is, and I mean, I could go on and on about this, but the other part I will say to this is, there's a thing called the military life cycle transition. And it was mandated to the Department of Defense, and it was mandated to the services. And what that means is, from the day you raise your hand and join the service, in whatever role you join it, until the day you leave, you're supposed to have transition-related training at key touch points throughout your career.
Oh.
No. Yeah. See? Nobody does it.
I've never heard that.
Not at a single look up the military life cycle transition.
Hmm.
So what I would love, and let's not get into how the Navy transitions people. Oh my God. I won't get you in trouble on that one. But like, if you're getting out in 3 months, you're going to ship and your ship's shipping out, you're getting shipped out and you're getting dropped off in a port and you get 12 days at Norfolk or San Diego.
Hmm.
Like we got to do better on that. And it would be better if, regardless of service, you had like maybe your first leader, like your first professional education experience. You got something on determining your why, like what's next, and maybe an overview of the sectors. And then the next one, you got something about building a resume. And the next one, you got something on interview skills. And so that by the time you're a senior leader, maybe when you are a Navy captain, you're already an expert on an expert as much as you can be on the transition. And then you're making sure that your units are doing things to take care of your sailors or your soldiers or your, you know what I mean?
I do.
Because if we, and it's not a huge lift. Like if you did like 1 hour in each course, even if you just extended the course an hour or whatever, like people would be so much better prepared for their transition. And I got to say, I think I've had senior leaders say, well, we can't make it easy for them to leave. I'm like, look, once they make a decision to leave, they're leaving. I'm like,
yeah.
But if you have a bad transition, no one in your family will ever serve from that point forward. No. Because you're going to tell them it was a bad experience. They didn't take care of me.
Mm-hmm.
And so I have to tell people, look, there is no better recruiter than a well-transitioned service member. I tell everyone, like, join the Army. Now, if my kids want to join, they're coming in as an officer, not enlisted. but you know, I tell everyone because I had an amazing Army career. I had an amazing transition, you know, and so when we talk about the transition assistance program, which is more like, it's not just your service. Like it literally is, there's no one that owns it. That's the other problem. There should be one person that overall is responsible for it. You've got TVPO, you've got the services, you've got the DOL, you've got the VA. They all have different pieces of roles in it. And so what happens is there's too many chiefs, not enough Indians.
Right.
And they're not all going in the same direction. So it never ends up really coming together. So if I offended anyone, you know, hey, do your thing. This is my impression from being so invested in it over the last 4 years.
And that's what that's my next question. It's going to lead into this is what drives you? Like why are you so passionate about this issue? What do you think it is? If you could say like, why? Because you're very passionate about this.
I mean, so people look at the success now, the network, they're like, oh, it was a breeze. No, look, the year of my transition was the hardest year of my life. The hardest year of my life. I never had so much uncertainty. I never had to work as hard as I did. You know, I never had to like have gut check moments with myself to really figure out who I am, what I was going to do. The fear of not having a paycheck when I hit my retirement. You know, there were just so many things that made it difficult. And if I'm going to be honest, like nothing in the transition program helped me. Now, I did not get a good instructor. In fact, I walked out of my TAP class. It was so bad. I mean, like the things that the lady that was teaching was telling people to do, I actually had to raise my hand and say, I'm sorry, no one listened to this lady. That is not how the world works. Like, I mean, it was just really bad advice. When I did my final out, the guy that was responsible for the transition center, he didn't talk to me about anything in the process. It was a checklist that he went through. When I went down to the transition center to try to get LinkedIn, wanted to come, Dan was going to teach it for free at Fort Belvoir. The lady said no. I had to go to so like nothing in the process. Like I didn't find out about DOG SkillBridge till it was too late. You know, the VA TAP. I mean, I love me some VA. I love the VBA. But when I went through the VA training program, was one day, like somebody came in and they're like, well, but we'll try to get it done by noon so you guys can all get out early. It wasn't, do you have what you need? And they literally just rapid fired everything the VA does, and you can't. That's why VFW, American Legion, Wounded Warrior, that's why they exist, is because it's too much to navigate on your own. And, so I just had I had such a horrible transition. And it made me, when I found my success and I realized that what I was doing made sense and that I couldn't change, I couldn't influence the system from the inside, that I needed to create opportunity, I needed to educate, I needed to stay involved on the outside. And so that's what drives me. I mean, I'm still a sergeant major at heart,
Yeah.
Look, if you ask me a stupid question in a message, I'm going to give you a sergeant major answer sometimes. And if you don't like it, then you can go find someone else. But I'm always going to say my truth. I'm always going to be honest. It pisses some people off and other people like it. So I'm not trying to be loved by anyone. What I don't want ever question is my passion to take care of and support the transitioning service members, veterans, and military spouses. Aside from that, I'm just building my community, and if people don't like me because I'm blunt, honest, I say things they don't like, I don't need them in my community. Right. I don't want to be loved by everyone. I want to build a community of people that appreciate one another and value the authentic me, just like I value the authentic them.
Absolutely. Absolutely, Mike. Wow. Well, this has been such an incredible conversation. Is there anything that I should have asked you about that I left out that you'd like to give a plug for, or anything else that we didn't cover?
I had one thing, because a lot of people think this is just about the transition. And when we talk about being intentional, and intentional doesn't mean overthinking. It just means really having those goals in mind and networking with that in mind. I got the job at EY as an executive in the People Advisory Services practice. First week on the job, I sent out 400 connection requests to partners, principals, managing directors, senior managers, and managers in EY. From my office to the CEO of the firm, like all the senior partner, like the most senior partners. And I had a personal message attached to every one of them. Hi, first name, comma, I'm a new senior manager at the firm. I just started this week. I'd love to join your professional network. Best, Mike. Now, because I was doing the search, I could control paste the message. And just do hi.
Yeah, sure.
Hi, whomever. And I sent those out, and the vast majority accepted. And then I just kept being me. Yeah. And what happened is all these partners started seeing the engagement, and honestly, to find your success in a huge firm like an EY, over 300,000 people, you have to network outside of your immediate job. And so what I found is all these partners, they weren't commenting, but they were seeing Michael Quinn, Michael Quinn, Michael Quinn, Michael Quinn, Michael Quinn, Michael Quinn. And so I remember I went to one event and I walked in and I had like 3 partners that I'd never met, like in person, be like, hey, Mike, how's it going? And I'm like, and over the course of those 2 years, like I'd have people, no one ever questioned what I was doing because they still like, I don't know how you do all of this. And it was just a post a day. Yeah. And so I tell people, like, it doesn't stop when you transition, when you get that first job. Things grow exponentially. Like at the end of my first year, I think I was at like 3,000. At the end of my second year, I was at 30,000. And then it just kept, like, your funnel goes like this. So just, stay engaged. It's not a sprint. It's a marathon. And I think I really want to say that, this is truly a platform where you can grow relationships at scale. And And I have to constantly remind people, one of the worst things that can happen for people is they have a viral post in the beginning, because then they're always looking for those clicks, those numbers,
Yep.
those engagement.
Oh, yeah.
And I have to tell people, like, a lot of people will post like the bad recruiter post, or the companies don't like veterans post, or like something, like that is like like these clickbait,
Yeah.
like
Negative.
like
Yep.
or even the clickbait, like hire people, like resumes don't matter, culture matters, or like these, some of these other influencers throw this like Hallmark card stuff out there that's really fake. Like, they showed up 4 hours late for the interview, missing a shoe, couldn't answer any of the questions, but I hired them and they were my best employee ever. Like people do that.
Yeah.
And so
Very,
I have to tell our transitioning military community that don't fall into that trap. Share content that's authentic you, that aligns to what you want to do. Right?
I love that.
It doesn't matter. Like, I talked to Jeremy Lorette today, cyber sergeant major. I'm like, I had to tell him, he's posting his ranch all the time. I'm like, do you want to be on a ranch? He's like, no, that's like my side thing. I want to work in cyber. I'm like, well, right now I just think you want to be a rancher.
Yeah.
And so I have to like tell people, like, connect with people in your desired field, and then share authentic stories of when you, like, if you're going to say you have 10 years project management experience, you better have some damn project management stories to share, right? Things that so share those, and they're not going to get 10,000 views and 800 likes. But when you're consistently sharing those stories, what's happening is those people, those decision makers, are seeing them, and they're seeing you post content that relates to that field. And I can't tell you how many times, like, I go to places and people will know me and say, I never click, but I see your content all the time and I love it. And I feel like I know you.
I love it.
And so that's my thing. Don't get caught up. Like Dan Savage warned me 2.5 years ago, as I started to fall into the trap, like, I'm not getting engagement. And now I'm like, screw it. Like, I'm going to be me. I'm going to keep doing it. And we're going to come together. So that was a lot longer of a closing than you probably needed.
No, but I think that you just nailed it on the head when you said the thing about engagement, because I relate a lot to that. There are posts that I do sometimes that might, only get 5 comments, but if I engage meaningfully with those 5 people that took the time to leave those comments, I consider that a success. And you're absolutely right. It's more about just the consistency, posting things that are within the industry that you desire or that you're already in, that you want to deepen into. And just like you say, being yourself and being authentic. And that's what people really want to see. They want to see you. And you've shown us how to do that. And so, Mike, I thank you so much for taking this time to come on the show today and give people a little bit of idea of ways that they can grow their network, ways that they can build upon what they already do to get to the next level in life. It's such a blessing and such an important service. So I will meet you on here backstage in just a second, but I'm going to go ahead and
I have one more
thing. Okay, go
challenge for you.
Okay.
Right. So I saw some concern there.
No.
So, as a public affairs, as a communication professional, right?
Mm-hmm.
For your next career down the road, at some point, right? You can build your personal identity, which you're doing a fantastic job, right? But at some point, you have to talk about the behind the scenes, what it's like to be a public affairs officer. Like, what, like, metrics for success, challenges you've overcome, like what it's like to do that for the Navy.
I agree.
It won't get anywhere near the same views as your most recent posts, but I tell people you have to mix in the personal and the professional. And so I would challenge you to start thinking about, like, how you can share a story about how, like, maybe an incident happened and you had to come for the commander and, like, provide some, options for them how to address it. Maybe how you had to, take an account and manage it differently, or the kind of metrics that are important to you in the Navy and your role. I would love to see more of that starting now. So 3 years from now, people start seeing that as well, and you won't have as hard of a transition if you decide to go that route down the road.
I think that's excellent advice. And I think as I move forward with my career, I'm going to be getting a lot more of those opportunities to build those things. The last really meaningful job I had was in Singapore. So I did, not Singapore, El Salvador. And I did post a little bit about that. But as you saw, or as anyone has seen, I sort of just add my personal touch into all of it instead of just the professional touch. And so that's valuable advice. I do need to incorporate a little bit more of my professional life into my LinkedIn. I tend to do mostly just the personal and not the professional, but you're right. It's a mix of both. And we can't forget that. So thank you so much for joining, Mike. And thank you all for you guys for joining tonight. I will have one more guest next week. Then I'm going to take a couple weeks off because I have a promotion ceremony later this month that I have to plan. So that now is the priority. But next month I will be having Deborah Fry. She was one of my co-authors in Complicated Alliances, and she is a grief expert and has just an amazing story of her own to share, and just can't wait to hear more about the services that she shares for others. And so thank you all for joining us tonight. Enjoy the rest of your evening and have an awesome evening. Bye.
Bye.